Hi, everybody. Welcome out to another episode of Windshield Time at Mountain Land Supply. I'm Joey, joined today by our chairman of the board, Brent Anderson. Thank you.
Glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
We're here with Shorts, of course.
Yeah, you are.
And that's as much as Short's going to say today. Maybe we'll let him in on it a little bit. So I asked Brent to come on today because we at Mountain Land have a very rich history, and Brent has seen a lot of that history. So I wanted you guys to get a chance to hear it straight from Brent, you know, kind of where this company came from and some of our origins. We're so very proud of the history that we have here, you know, the fact that it's been employee-owned now, but really employees have been owning the processes for so long. And you've seen a ton of that, and we're part of that, and you help us become an ESOP. So I know I like picking your brain. Everybody's going to like picking your brain a little bit.
Well, thank you.
So maybe tell everybody just about your days in Price, like how you first came to Mountain Land when you were a resident salesman in the Price area.
You know what? That's a fun story.
Yeah.
So not everybody's going to remember this, but in 1982, I believe, there was a landslide in Spanish Fork Canyon. It was a place called Billy's Mountain. And I had accepted employment a few months before the landslide.
Like awesome timing.
Like it was terrible timing. and part of my major customers obviously were plumbers and cities and waterworks utility. But part of the major customer was the coal mines. And coal mining was booming until it wasn't.
Yeah, right.
And so I moved down, and within 3 months, the coal mines went on strike. Billy's Mountain slid and cut off all the trade routes, and I'd moved my family down, and we were kind of stuck in Price.
So it covered the railroad tracks too, right?
Covered everything.
Yeah, they had to reroute the railroad tracks and the highway, and the town of Thistle was destroyed.
Yeah, so imagine the time that you take to drive to Price now is about, what, an hour and a half?
Yeah, maybe.
That turned into 3 hours as you went through Duchesne, or you went up over through Fairview or around through Salina.
Yeah, over Skyline
And that
Drive.
became my reality of how delivery was going to happen down there too.
Jeez.
So pretty tough.
Yeah.
And enough of a recession with Jimmy Carter that we moved our family down and bought our new home, which I'll just go through just a little bit. We bought that at the 16% interest rate.
Unreal.
And nothing was for sale because coal mining was booming.
Sure.
Until it wasn't.
Right.
And so we bought a place and we moved a modular home. It didn't have any water. We put in a cistern, and I would drive to Wellington, which was about 10 miles away.
Yeah.
And pay 50 cents for 500 gallons of water and haul it back and pump it out of our cistern. That was what
people have no idea.
That was our humble beginning in Price, Utah.
Oh man, that is it. And you lived out just off of, or were you almost to Elmo?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So we were, in fact, within just a few inches of the Emery County border. But we lived south of Price, and we bought a piece of property, set up our modular home, put in our cistern, and quickly found out propane was more expensive.
Yeah.
Can I tell you just one quick? Let me tell you how poor we were for a minute.
Absolutely.
And then I'll stop.
No, this is what we're here for.
So I bought an old pickup truck. It was a 1954 Chevrolet half-ton pickup truck from a guy in Price that had been original owner. Man, I wish I still had that truck.
I was going to say, I wish you still had it because I'd want it so bad.
It was a pretty cool truck.
Yeah.
And we had 2 little boys. They were 6 and 4.
So Duncan's not born yet.
Not born.
So Duncan Anderson that works for us.
And won't be born in Price, by the way.
Okay.
So we have our 2 little boys, and we're trying to heat our home. And so we no seatbelts in this truck, of course.
Weird.
So I put my wife and myself, and we tucked the 2 little kids in between us, and we went up towards a little town called Hiawatha that is south and west of Price. Mm-hmm. And we went to go get some firewood. And we didn't have a chainsaw because certainly we couldn't afford that. But we had an axe and a sledgehammer and a handsaw. And so the 2 little kids are running around. We found a place. 2 little kids are running around. We loaded up the truck with firewood that I'd cut, and we loaded up to go home, and I pulled out onto the main highway just as a sheriff pulled up, and the lights flashed on, and he pulled me over. And I'm like, I haven't got $10 for a firewood permit, let alone a $200 fine, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so he pulled me over, and I'm telling you, he looked at this ragtag family, and he looked at the wood, and he looked back at us, and he looked back, and he says, was the gate open or closed when you went in there? And I said, it was open. Did you leave it open? We did. Have a great day. He's seen our circumstance. God bless him to this day that he let us go. But that was our time in Price. It was tough. It was pretty thin.
I've retold that story. I haven't plagiarized it because I do cite you. But I told that to my daughters 2 years ago. During the winter, we had some sort of brownout, a power outage. And so we didn't have power for, I don't know, like 18 hours maybe.
Okay.
But it was cold, so they were doubling up on blankets. And I was telling them of the days when we had a wood-fired stove in my house growing up. And you knew what that place looked like. But then I told them your story. I'm like, you guys have no idea that you just click a button and heat comes. You don't realize.
You have to work for it.
You have to go out and cut a cord of wood. You know, and put it in your truck and bring it home. And so much effort goes into nothing now. It's just, I just walk over and I get pissed because the propane's not working or the natural gas isn't on or something,
Right.
It's so, I think that's what people really appreciate, or I appreciate about you, is the humble beginnings. And that's really Mountainland in a nutshell too.
I don't want to dwell on humble. And that's my story. We didn't stay in Price we were there about 5 years. And the opportunity to come work in the Orem store with Bob Rasmussen, who had been my mentor and who sits on our board today and who had been a salesman there before I was. So I became a resident salesman there. We made it work, made lots of friends. Some of my closest friends today still live in Price, Utah. Yeah. And again, not to emphasize the humble beginning, but it was a humble beginning.
Absolutely.
And then it just got better. It's Price is still a very profitable area for us.
Absolutely, it is.
Great relationships. Wink, wink. It was nice to come to Orem.
Well, I selfishly jumped right on your shoulders and took care of those coal mines for about 8 years when I was in outside sales.
8 years, no kidding.
And the groundwork that you and Bob and Scott Mason and Brian Haskell that you all put in for me, I reaped the benefits, and my family was able to live off that through 2008 through 2014, and it was because of your hard work and effort, and you driving over that mountain pass for 3 hours each way for all those years. That helped me to be able to support my family.
I'm so glad to hear that. You pay your dues.
Yeah,
and sometimes they're pretty steep, but it certainly doesn't feel like that today. But. Yeah. When you're in the middle of it,
it looks bleak.
Well, I don't know that it looked bleak, but it didn't look hopeless.
Yeah,
but it was thin.
What's cool about it though is that no matter what, you just work your way through it.
Yeah.
You needed firewood. Well, kids, let's go out and cut it. We're going to figure this out. We're not just going to be a victim of the circumstance. We're going to create our own circumstance.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well said.
So, coming to Orem as Mountainland Supply. So. When I tell the story of the history and the origins of Mountainland, I always just say, in the 70s, it came to Mountainland in Orem and it became Mountainland instead of Provo Plumbing Supply. Kind of tell people about Geneva Steel and what that meant to this company at that time.
Okay, well, so let's dial back just a little bit. So we were founded in 1947. A guy named Paul Gehring founded us. He come home from World War II, went to work for Sears in the plumbing department. And his customers loved him. They said, you ought to do this on your own. And he did.
And Art Adamson, is that the same time?
Yeah, so he partnered with a developer, Art Adamson, and their first 5 years were pretty tough. They didn't know if they'd be able to keep it open or not.
Yeah.
Lyle Patton came on at that time. That's a name none of you know, but he was my first boss.
Amazing man.
And Bob Rasmussen's first boss. In 1968, he takes over ownership with partners of then Provo Plumbing. In 1978, they moved to this facility out here, and they split off the heating company. So there's two corporations now, and we were Provo Plumbing Supply to that point.
Yeah.
The move here to Orem, this was an old dairy farm that we live on, or that we were built on, and he developed the whole property. He split off contractors, heating, cooling, supply, and that was our beginning here in 1978. Bob Rasmussen and I took over in 1986, and we were still Mountain Land Pipe and Plumbing Supply. So within that first year, we shortened that to Mountain Land Supply. We were handed a company that had about 30 employees, and we were doing about $6 million a year, and no computer systems. That was all hand-generated tickets.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I kind of smile. Our budget included weed killer to spray the back of this building to keep the weeds down.
That is so awesome.
Yeah.
That's a line item. That is so cool.
Yeah. So it's grown nicely. To the east of us was all Russian olive trees and nothing clear to Monroe
Tamaracks
Drive.
and cat's tails.
Yeah. So the development and seeing what it's become versus what we started with, it's to your point. It just takes time to grow that and the sacrifice to build it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Geneva Steel was your biggest account for a long time.
Which was a lot scary as you think about that. So Geneva Steel, which is where Vineyard is now. Geneva Steel's no longer
all
there.
Those residential homes.
So
that was all a steel
that was a
mill.
big steel mill.
Yeah.
And that was more, oh my goodness, I was going to say more than half. It was probably closer to 70% of our business. And you talk about put all your eggs in one basket.
That's a lot of concentration.
There was a lot of concentration there.
Yeah.
The move here was to be right next door to them to facilitate what they were doing to produce steel. And it was a very profitable thing to do.
Highly visionary, yeah.
But we were right on the edge of where development was happening.
Yeah.
Maybe even more than the edge, because
You were on
there
an
was
island.
just nothing out here. We were next door to Geneva Steel, our biggest customer by design. Changed the name to Mountain Land Pipe and Plumbing Supply, shortened that within the first year, and that was our customers. Geneva Steel goes through a transition,
Big time transition.
and now we don't have a customer.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do with that?
You reinvent yourself.
So
You go out and cut that firewood.
So Bob
gotta
Rasmussen,
survive.
there you go.
Yeah.
So Bob Rasmussen, he sat down with us and said it's time to expand our base, and we really started looking at different customer bases, and by the time we were done, I think Geneva was more like about 3% of our business.
Thank goodness.
But you can't imagine that because that was your bread and butter.
To go from 70% to 3% by the time they close their doors,
It's crazy.
that you always use the word remarkable. That is remarkable.
Well,
that you were able to dial it back that much and really save the company.
you know, I do use remarkable, and one of my other catchphrases is just in time.
Yeah.
You know, Bob Rasmussen arrives just in time to have a vision of what we can do to replace what that will be, not knowing that he's going to need to.
Yeah.
But has some vision and some foresight into some different markets we can go into. That includes going out into the Uinta Basin, it includes going into St. George, includes expanding what the price area is,
Yeah.
going out into the Delta market. None of that really existed because we were satisfied with what was here in Utah
You didn't
County.
need to.
Yeah.
Which is that's kind of been the hallmark of the growth pattern for Mountain Land over the years. Like you were saying, go out to the Uinta Basin. Well, we have business here. We had not necessarily resident salespeople in the Uinta Basin, but salespeople going out multiple times per week to develop the territory, establish brick and mortar, and then another brick and mortar. Same thing happens in Richfield. Same thing happens in St. George. And to be able to greenfield that much territory in such a short amount of time, because it relatively is a short amount of time, because you started that growth pattern in 2002, 2003?
Correct.
When you first went to Roosevelt and
Yes.
Richfield?
Yes.
Or Roosevelt first and St. George? And then that's only 20 years. 20 years and you're essentially 50 branches.
But well, and I'm not going to take credit for all that.
No, but I mean that's the type of momentum that you start.
But you had to put your anchor in a couple of different markets that we weren't at, for sure.
It's incredible.
You know, it was interesting. Lyle Patton, he sat on our board, and he refused to put brick and mortar into places. He says we can do it so much more efficiently
With trucks.
on having it here and delivering it. And
The hub and spoke.
it was a hub and spoke, and he compared it to other supply houses that he didn't think much of. And he says, you don't want to become those people.
Yeah.
I'm glad we did. But he was not supportive of what our multi-branch...
Well, you can see why. I mean, it's a huge expense to put brick and mortar. But to your vision and you and Bob's vision, every time you would drive out there, you're coming back empty. And now you don't have to do that anymore. You know, you establish a brick and mortar. Now you're not coming back 200 miles empty. You're coming back 2 miles empty from a delivery.
Which drove us crazy, by the way.
It still does, right?
Yeah,
We still try and find ways to optimize the fleet. It's fun to see that the same concepts continue to work. You just alter them just a little bit, you know?
You know, along that line, we had conversation about the transfer truck that would go back and forth from St. George and then back and forth from Ogden and everything along the way. You can't imagine the pushback we got on that as well.
I can imagine it. I'm glad I wasn't in the room, but I can imagine it.
It was just a new concept, and today you don't think anything of it, but we gave birth to that, and it had a lot of revisions before we got it right.
It really hurts when fuel goes up to $5 a gallon, that's for sure.
Oh my gosh, and it did.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have a lot of time left over because we do try and make this just a commute show. But we always ask everybody, you know, what's your Mountain Land moment? When you first came to Mountain Land, what was the moment where you felt like this was home? I know that's a kind of a tough question to ask on short notice, like no notice.
You know, I sat in Lyle's office and I took over responsibilities for quite a few things. So Bob primarily did vendor and customer relationships, and I primarily did everything operations. So everything insurance, HR, fleet, accounts payables,
Personnel.
accounts receivable, hiring, firing, personnel. I remember sitting here one night about 8 o'clock at night. My little family's at home, just grinding through some accounts receivable issues and trying to get my arms wrapped around what was going on. And I thought, I love this place. This is home. And eventually I didn't have to stay till 8 o'clock every night. Although back in the day,
you did a lot.
When we backed up the computer and we got bigger and bigger, we backed it up on reel tapes back in the day. Oh. And as we got bigger, those tapes took forever. And so I want you to picture me sleeping in the computer room on a cot all night to change out those tapes, only to get up and shower in the grungy shower we had here and be ready to go with no sleep for the next day.
I believe it.
Again, another sacrifice, but well worth it.
Yeah.
I think the only scary moment on that, excuse me, was this is the haunted building moment here.
Oh, yeah. Got a couple of those.
That was, they were doing some electrical work outside, and so the 3 legs of electricity here, they were interrupting that.
Yeah.
And I was working here one night, and one leg went out, and then another, and then, my office lights are on, and then they're off, and then the hallway lights are on and off. And I'm just like, I probably ought to go home. And I went out to see what they were doing, and there was no one there.
Oh.
So I'm like, I probably ought to go home now.
This building does feel haunted when it's late nights.
Once in a while, but I felt at home having probably my fingers in so many pieces of the pie.
Well, thank you. Thank you for all you've done. Thank you for the pie that you created for us.
Oh, it's a wonderful place.
It's my home. It's your home. And hopefully it feels like home to a lot of other people that are listening to this.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's wonderful history. Thank you for the interview.
Of course. All right, everybody. That's Windshield time for today, so enjoy the ride. Catch you later.